Hey everyone, Chuck here, and thanks for stopping by and joining me for another weekly devotional. I want to share with you 3 things that the Bible teaches that God requires of us. And by the end of this video, we'll see how those 3 things from the Old Testament ties right into or right with the 2 commandments that Jesus gave us over in the book of Matthew. So what I'm about to share, to me, is one of the most powerful single verses in the Old Testament. And this is a book and a verse that my good buddy Tim loves. And it's found in Micah chapter 6, verse 8. And this verse is, it's not complicated. To me, it's just plain talk from God. It's what I would call a very practical verse. In the world that we're living in, with all its noise and confusion, we sometimes find ourselves asking, what does God want from me? Well, I believe Micah 6:8 answers that question. Now, it's not about a list of religious rituals or impressive works. It's simple, but yet it's profound, and it speaks straight to the heart. So let me read it for you. This is the book of Micah, chapter 6 and verse 8. And here's what it says. He hath shown thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justly, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God? These verses, they're just as relevant, or this verse is just as relevant today as it was when the prophet Micah delivered them. The first thing that we see that God requires is that we do justly. Now, to me, that means living right. It's about more than just avoiding evil. It's about standing up for what's good, for what's fair, and what's true. Justice starts at home. Do we treat people fairly? Do we keep our word? Are we honest in our business dealings? And are we generous in spirit? Over in the book of Proverbs, chapter 21, verse 3, it says, to do justice and judgment is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. That means God's more interested in how you treat your neighbor than how many songs you may sing in church. Jesus showed justice in action. He never overlooked the poor. He never overlooked the outcast. And he never overlooked the ones who were mistreated. And we're called to follow that same example that Jesus set. Secondly, in this verse, we see the Lord tells us to love mercy. Not just show mercy when we have to, but actually love it. And that means that we're to find joy in offering forgiveness and in giving second chances and in showing compassion, even to those that we feel don't deserve it. Think about how God treats us. Over in the book of Lamentations, chapter 3, verses 22 and 23, it says, it is of the Lord's mercy that we are not consumed, because His compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Every single day, God pours out fresh mercies over our lives. If God gives us mercy every morning, surely we can give mercy to those who are around us. Maybe it's to your spouse, or maybe it's to a coworker, or it could even be to yourself. Mercy reflects, I believe, the very heart of God. Now, finally, in that verse, he says, walk humbly with thy God. Now, this speaks to relationship. It's not about knowing of God. It's about walking with Him every day in humility. To walk humbly means we don't run ahead of God thinking we have it all figured out. It means that we walk in step with Him, trusting His timing, and leaning on His wisdom and not on our own wisdom. Over in the book of James, it tells us that God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. So if you want grace, if you need strength for the journey, It all starts with humility. You know, we live in a world that celebrates pride and self-promotion, but God, He calls us to walk humbly with Him. Now let me point something out about this verse in Micah chapter 6, verse 8, that sometimes may go unnoticed. If you look at it, you notice that it ends with a question mark. Now, that punctuation isn't just grammar. It actually carries weight. Micah 6:8 is really a rhetorical question. It's like God is saying, haven't I already shown you what is good? You know, he's saying, don't you already know what I require, what I really require? You know, the question mark isn't asking if these things are true. It's emphasizing that they are true. It's God's way of sort of saying, hey, this is it. This is what matters. Justice, mercy, and humility. This is the life that I want for you. It's not about empty religion. It's about a relationship with God. It's about character and how we treat one another as we walk with Him daily. So let me go back to the original question there in Micah 6:8. What doth the Lord require of thee? I believe He shows us that to do justly, we live a life of honesty, fairness, and integrity. To love mercy, we find joy in forgiving and showing grace. And to walk humbly, that means we stay close to God, leaning on Him every step of the way. Now, you may be thinking, hey, you know, this sort of sounds familiar. Well, it should, because Jesus echoed the same heart in the New Testament. You're over in Matthew chapter 22, verses 37 through 40. Jesus was asked what the Great Commission was. And here was Jesus' answer. And Jesus said unto him, Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is likened unto it. Thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Now, that last part, he said something very, very powerful. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. So in other words, everything God has ever asked of us, including what Micah said, hangs on these two things: love God and love people. You know, when we do justly and love mercy, you're loving your neighbor. You know, when we walk humbly with God, that's showing that you love the Lord with all of your heart. So today, let's not just hear this verse in Micah. Let's live this verse. Let's live it out in our lives. Let's live this verse in such a way that if someone was to ask, well, what does it mean to follow God? They could look at your life and see justice and mercy and humility. So folks, I want to thank you for staying with me to the end. I hope it's given you something to think about, and I hope it'll be a blessing to you. And I'd like to invite you, if you're new to our channel, please subscribe. We would love to have you. I try to do a new devotion each week. Also have some music that you can find a playlist in the description that I sing, and I try to put a new song out. It's not a song of mine that I've written or anything. It's just a song that I sing. Sometimes it's a hymn, or could be a popular Southern gospel song. But I try to sing a new song each week for you, hoping it'll be an encouragement and be a blessing to you. And like I said, you can, in the description below, you can find my playlist, a playlist to all my devotionals, and a playlist for all the songs that I've put out on the YouTube channel. So look, we would love to have you, so please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and that way you'll be notified each time we produce new content. So until next time, may God bless.